All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this conversation about why do we need art, what do we gain by being creative, and other big questions. So I'm Annemarie Young, a senior member and associate tutor at Hughes Hall at the University of Cambridge. And amongst other things, I'm a writer of non-fiction and of stories for children. And my colleague, Paul, with whom I'm in conversation.
Hello.
Paul Rockett has worked in publishing for over 20 years, previously as an English as a foreign language teacher. We have this in common in our past. He's held publishing jobs ranging from art editor to creative operations manager, author, project editor, and now publisher in many different companies, including Oxford University Press, my other main publisher, and now with Hachette Wayland. His degree is in English literature and fine art, and he's always been interested in the convergence of the two creative forms. So I just need to tell you that we're recording the session, including the question and answer later on. And we found that the best way to deal with questions is if you could please write them in the chat function that you'll find at the bottom of your screen. And we'll answer them either as we go or later on in the conversation. And I am going to share my screen, which will go through the various spreads of the book, so you can see what it's all about as we talk about it. Okay, we'll take it from there.
Great. Okay, well, hello, everyone. I'm going to kind of kick off with a broad big question for Annemarie. The series and other big questions has become very kind of much a crown jewel within our publishing list. We've done 11 titles to date, but it kind of predates my existence within Hachette. So Annemarie, I wonder if you could kind of describe briefly how the whole series kind of came about.
Okay, yeah, I'm really happy to do that. So briefly, What is Humanism, which is the first title in the series, was a proposal that Michael Rosen and I came up with together. And for 2 years, I went around numerous publishers trying to sell them the idea. And all of them said, oh, wish we could do that, but. And then I was just about to give up on it. And I suddenly remembered I hadn't tried Joyce Bentley at Wayland Hachette, with whom I'd done some work previously. So I rang her, and amazingly, she answered the phone. I mean, how many people are there at their desk and answer the phone when you want them? I was about to go off on a long trip. And anyway, I told Joyce about the proposal, and she was very keen and very interested. And she said, right, send me the proposal. I emailed her the proposal. She said, we've got a publishing acquisitions meeting early next week. They usually happened much less frequently than that. Within a week, I had a yes, please, we're really interested. So we developed the whole thing. I mean, Michael and I already had in mind the format, which was asking questions. So the whole idea, which has become the template for the series, is to give readers information, but also, and crucially, asking them questions to get them to think for themselves and encouraging them to find out more about particular issues. So throughout the books, we have what we call think-abouts, and I'll show you this later on, information panels and a range of contributors talking about their own perspectives and their experiences and quotes. So the driver behind the series is to get readers to think for themselves about big questions while providing them with reliable information and other people's perspectives. And it does seem to have taken off. So this book is the 5th in the series for Michael and me as an author pair. Paul, could you tell us how and why you commissioned this particular topic?
Well, we had considered various other topics as a follow-up from politics, which was the last one you and Michael had worked on together. And we had discussed the idea of maybe free speech. We try and do things which feel kind of relevant to the moment. But everything was very gloomy, and the whole question about free speech and trolling and Twitter, it just wasn't very cheerful. And I thought art would bring some kind of positivity to the list, to the world. And also there is a relationship with art, obviously, to freedom of expression and freedom of speech. But I kind of also wanted to kind of tap into the idea of creativity and imagination, which Lem is very good when he talks about this in the book. Publishing had also, for us, become very much about science-based subjects for students. So we've been doing an awful lot of books on engineering, on science and maths, which, you know, have their place, but I kind of wanted to kind of something else to go in there. And also for art to be treated in the same kind of serious way that we treat those other subjects. And this was all kind of before the government then, you know, started saying, well, you know, the arts aren't important as science, or they had that terrible advert of a ballerina, and they're saying, oh, her future will be in cyber. Where actually, you know, what they're doing is they're saying, well, there's no space for dance in her future. Well, actually, dance is just as valid and equal as any other subject. So, you know, it kind of felt like it deserved that kind of a new platform to be taken seriously. The books themselves, however, aren't polemical, so it's not really kind of pushing an agenda here, and it's very important that they have space for contributors to discuss their own thoughts and feelings and to open them up, as Annemarie said, for the reader themselves to really think about and form their own opinions about it. So that's really why kind of the art one came about, and you know, it was before the pandemic, it was before there's been great questions about art funding, so it does feel quite relevant now that it's out at this time.
Yes.
But I mean, that's really kind of where my starting point was. But Annemarie, having worked on the book, perhaps you could give me your perspective about what this book is really about.
Well, I would like to throw this to people to think about, first of all. What do we mean by art? So have a bit of a think about that. And right, so I hope you'll agree that art takes many, many forms. All right, so as Paul said, dance, okay, that's one of them. There's not just what you find in galleries, paintings and sculptures and so on. There's film, music, dance, drama, fiction, non-fiction, poetry, architecture, design, crafts, cooking, gardening. I mean, they're all creative endeavors, and it's creativity that it's all about. So when Michael and I first sat down and discussed this with Nicola, our wonderful editor, this is how all the books sort of happened to start with. We just brainstormed all of these things, and we came up with what I'll show you in a moment by sharing my screen, I think. And yes, and you mentioned science, and of course, yes, science is incredibly important, but without the imagination, without the creativity that you get with art, then science wouldn't come up with new inventions and ideas. I mean, creativity is at the heart of science as well. So I'm going to share my screen. I hope this is going to work. Okay, yeah. Right. Can you see that, Paul?
Yes, that's great.
Okay, excellent. All right. So this is I'm just going to go through these fairly quickly. The contents page is rather boring looking. Okay, so what is this book about? And you'll see we have pictures of people and quotes. What do we mean by art? We set that up, and we've got Maggie Hambling's controversial, though why it's controversial and not quite understood, the scallop art. What's art for? And then you'll see photography, which we didn't spend any other time on, but we've got these two photos that show that that photography is an art form that can make us think, because on the left is the photo taken before lockdown, and on the right is during lockdown, this is in India, in Delhi. Oops, so there we go. Why do we need art? And just through lots and lots of research, I found Sally Peters in the States. She's the founder of an organization called Speak Out Loud, with her 5 reasons for why art is important. natural human behavior, communication. Art is healing, tells our story. Art is a shared experience. Wonderful. And this, just serendipitously, the Master Quilters of Gee's Bend, Alabama. I was astonished to read this morning. It was an article in yesterday's paper about a wonderful exhibition in London of these quilts from Alabama. Wonderful story. So why do we need art? And then, okay, and then this is the spread where Michael and I talk about our own experiences and perspectives. Where do artists come from? All sorts of places. This is the first of our other contributors, Andrea Zafaraku, extraordinary, wonderful teacher. She won the Global Teacher Prize in 2018. And she teaches and set up a foundation with the prize money. And I'll go back possibly and be able to read something of what she says. How is it transformative? And then have I got some think abouts there? No, here we go. There's a think about. Right here, next time you're affected by art, you could ask yourself questions like this. Why did I think that? How and why did my feelings change as I looked or read? And then where do we find art? So we've got try this with this in this book. We didn't have that in any of the others. It wasn't appropriate, but here we're getting the readers to try things themselves. And where do we find art? And I was very pleased to be able to have this bit of Banksy graffiti, which is on the apartheid wall in Palestine, which is close to my heart. Lem Sisse, again, all the contributors are absolutely fantastic. And, you know, I do recommend that you read what they have to say. And you'll have to read the book to see what the line in the top hat is all about. This one, Lem and I discussed this. We did this as an interview, which I then wrote up. And this whole idea, the image of the line in the top hat came out of that discussion. Do you need training? More think abouts there. What uses the imagination? Fairly important. We've got all sorts of people there. And this is where we mention science and how important it is. And I've got a quote here from Philip Pullman saying that imagination is one of our highest faculties. And then there's this wonderful quote from Albert Einstein, two quotes, which I think are absolutely fantastic. Logic will get you from A to B. Imagination will take you everywhere. And knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world. So, you know, it's just brilliant. Then another contributor, Preeti Taneja, who's worked in lots of different spheres. She won, what was it, anyway, she recently won a prize for her first novel. And she's worked with refugees, art in precarious places, in prisons. And we've got this absolutely amazing poem from J.D. Magwitch, who was still in prison and who very sadly died suddenly only a few weeks ago. Another very powerful poem. What do we gain by being creative? More science. Peter Beard, who's a sculptor, ceramicist and potter, and how he works. So that's another interesting look at things. Can art speak truth to power? Is art powerful enough to be a challenge to those in power? And so we've got examples, and this Black Lives Matter protest in San Francisco used all sorts of different forms of art, you can see there, to commemorate the life of George Floyd. Satire, and of course satire is makes people laugh, but it makes them think about, particularly the absurdities and hypocrisies of people in power. And particularly some of the mad claims made by some of those in power. I'm sure some of you can think of ingesting bleach as an example of that. That was hugely satirized, as you can imagine. Can art change anything? Well, here we have dance. So Akram Khan uses dance to make people think about racism. There's a wonderful program that you can watch about that, the Curry House Kid, which was absolutely brilliant. I saw that and thought, yes, we must include that. And I think it was Nicola who told me about Olafur Eliasson. So his art makes people think about climate change, amongst other things. And here, this installation, you can actually see the effect of climate change on these blocks of ice from the Greenland ice sheet. It makes the whole thing visible and tangible. And then we have, I think I see Matilda on this Zoom, an extraordinary young woman who was introduced to us by Mary Wells, our friend who's a sculptor, who's this on the other side. And I think Matilda was 12 when she agreed that Mary could send me an essay she did for school on art and the importance of art. And we grabbed her and said, please, could you write a contribution? She's now all of 13 and quite an extraordinary young woman. Comedy, there's comedy art. We've got Rufus Hound and Shazia Mirza. We've got more thinkabouts. Why do we create music? Will Todd and George the Poet on that. And then Kate Clancy, another wonderful contributor who talks about poetry, what it's for, what are teenagers finding in poetry. She runs workshops for young people, school children, and we've got another amazing poem in there, courtesy of Kate, of Muhammad Asaf, age 12, called The Word Umi, my mother. It's just extraordinary. And then, so then we have at the end, what do you think, where we gather together the various thinkabouts and so on. I've got a panel there on more street art and Sonia Boyce. And then over to you. So try this, various things to try, and thinking creatively about the future. So there we are. Oh, oops, stop sharing that. Come back to you, I think.
So Annemarie, you've kind of given away a lot of the book there.
Oh, well, I think just, you know,
that's a good preview.
Read it.
That's a good preview. Obviously, what's really impressive is the contributors that feature. I wonder if you could kind of explain a little about how you went about deciding, approaching, or selecting who went into the book.
Well, this is very serendipitous usually. So we always brainstorm. We just sit at this editorial meeting. We usually have 2 before we start. I think we managed 2 before Michael got sick. So we did have a lot of brainstorming, and then I had to sort of take that over and carry it on. But we brainstorm names and throw out possible people, and then we have various contacts. So this time I had just read the previous week about Andrea Zafaraku, and I thought she was perfect. So I called her and she was really keen straight away. Lem Sisse is a friend and contact of Michael's. And then he came to Cambridge for the Cambridge Lit Fest and Literary Festival. And I met him and we got on extremely well, and Lem was very keen to be involved. Kate Clancy, another contact of Michael's. So I contacted them, and then we put a lot of people into the hat, and I think there might have been 1 or 2 others that we talked about, but who weren't available or couldn't do it. Oh, Akram Khan was one. He couldn't do it. He was very keen. So Peter Beard and Mary Wells, they're friends whose work I know well. I mean, my husband and I collect, actually, Anthony collects ceramics. And Mary had recently met her young neighbor, Matilda. So that's how we got Matilda. As I say, it's serendipitous. And Nicola had recently been to a talk she gave and said, look, her perspective and her work would fit really nicely. So we got J.D. Mackwidge's powerful poem. So that's how it happens, really. And you just hope that it all hangs together. And for every single book, we have found that they do somehow or other, they hang together. And we've been very happy with that. So.
And they all bring something different. I think that's what's really, really great about the contributions, is they shine a light on a different aspect of, in this particular case, what art means to them, or their practice, or their kind of sharing of the experience of art. Obviously, the book is framed by lots of different questions, not those on just on the cover. One of them is kind of questioning about art as a force for change, and can art actually change things? Are there any examples or instances you can think of where art has changed your mind about anything?
Okay, well, I've been thinking about this, and it's not so much changed my mind completely, although I may think of something at another point, but has deepened my understanding. So, for example, standing in front of, this was years ago, standing in front of Picasso's huge painting of Guernica in Madrid, made me really look at and think about the Spanish Civil War, but also war in general, things that I hadn't quite thought about before. And then quite differently, again, a piece of art, Kate Kollwitz's charcoal drawings of refugees, which are very small and not even detailed, but extremely powerful distillations. And that was in a gallery here. So they're two paintings, but also reading. And recently, Colm McCann's book, A Perigon, about two fathers, one Israeli, one Palestinian, who've become extremely close friends and activists and advocates who both lost children to violence in the Middle East. And I haven't quite finished the book yet, but it is a most astonishing book. And one of the reviews I read recently that was said, it's based on the true life friendship. So it's a novel, but it is based on hours and hours of interviews with these two people. She said, this novel buoys the heart. It's a masterpiece, a novel that will change the world. And you know, we can but hope that it does change the world, particularly that world. And what about you, Paul? Have you?
I mean, reading has given me a great deal of insight into things I wouldn't otherwise be aware of, and enlightened me, I suppose. But I think when I think of art that's made a real significant kind of change in my mindset, it's probably going back to when I was very, very young and at school, and what kind of ignited my interest in art in the first instance was walking into an art room. I must have been about 13, and I was very lucky to have an art teacher who was a bit unusual in the fact that he wasn't really interested in realism or naturalism or anything like that. And I remember very distinctly seeing a Basilitz painting for the very first time of a child holding an orange painted upside down. And that was a bit, you know, quite far out for someone who'd, you know, seen all the kind of Constables and the Impressionists, and it really kind of changed what I thought art could be, and kind of questioned kind of common orthodoxy. And I think that was really exciting. That was a really exciting moment for me, and really kind of ignited my interest to explore the possibilities of art more, and the possibilities of what other things could be beyond the kind of common understanding. So that feels quite significant. But I was very fortunate, I think, in having an art teacher who was broadening the kind of, you know, what art could be. You talk about in your book about your experience of art, where you were very much put off at school. So obviously a very different experience. And I wonder if you could say, you know, what would have changed that for you, or what you felt was really the issue there?
Well, this was in primary school. And then what would mainly have changed it would have been to have Andrea Zafirakou as a teacher, really. Because, you know, she says, oh, you know, what do I want my students to gain? I want them to create something which is truly theirs. I want them to experience having to make decisions. I want them to be curious, experimental, brave. You know, she obviously gives all of her students the freedom to express themselves. Whereas, and this was in primary school, I was very timid anyway in my endeavors as a child, you know, in primary school as a child of that age. And certainly I thought I couldn't draw. because I was trying to make lines work, you know, that no free drawing, no freehand or anything like that. And the teachers would, you know, praise girls who could draw, and I was just sort of left in the corner, and I just assumed I couldn't. So that's what would have changed it for me, I think. I'm not sure I would ever have become, I certainly wouldn't have become an artist, you know, with my hands. I'm not, that's not where things work for me. But it would have unleashed a bit more creativity, I think.
And I also think that it kind of does connect, you know, creativity in one form connects to being receptive to creativity in other forms as well. I mean, you also mentioned that you came to creativity itself quite late through the means of writing. What do you gain from that experience now, from being creative now that you didn't have previously?
I just feel like a much more rounded person. I have much more of a belief in myself as a rounded person, whereas I'd always thought that, you know, yes, I'm very meticulous and I'm very perfectionist and I'm a born editor. You know, I see things. My poor husband, who's an excellent writer, you know, he would give me something to look at and say, look, I just want a general idea. And I would say, yes, I know, but I can't go past, you know, the detail. But I didn't think I could do more than that somehow. And then I was asked to write some stories for children, young children learning to read, with constraints. And I just found that the constraints really freed me up. So, you know, there was limited vocabulary, limited number of words. And I found that I could actually be creative. I mean, there's one book that it's not a masterpiece by any means. It's called Chairs in the Air. and you can imagine it was the AIR words. And I had all these words, and I came up with however many words I could find that had the right. And I came up with this funny little story that I really enjoyed, and that all the people at the publishers thought worked really well too. So I feel a lot more like a whole rounded human being. So Paul, the book is obviously very timely this year, considering, you know, the closure of galleries and theatres. I really miss theatres and music venues during lockdown, and questions over government funding and so on for the arts. Many people have started new creative projects, and being creative has clearly helped a lot of people through the year. Whether it's learning the ukulele or painting rainbows or writing perhaps the great pandemic novel, which we may or may not see. I'm not sure I want to see it. No, I'm not sure I do either. But what have you most missed out on this year, and what have you found helpful?
I think what I've really missed the most is going to art galleries and standing in front of a painting. I mean, anything which doesn't involve a screen, to be honest, is what I've missed. So yeah, when we had that kind of reprieve in September, I did manage to go to the National Gallery, and it was just so refreshing. It was like, you know, I've been looking an oasis in a drought, essentially, you know, being able to stand in front of these paintings and just soak them in was just amazing. And I've really missed that. In terms of anything that's helped me, I mean, I kind of wish I'd had the time to be more creative, to be honest. I've struggled to read as much as I have done previously, and I think a lot of people have found that their attention span is a bit challenged, or just the kind of level of worry and concern with everything else going on has kind of interfered with that. But I mean, you know, I say I've missed anything without a screen, and I guess having, you know, most evenings I am in front of a screen, and if that's not with work video conferencing, then it will be TV. And I probably watched more TV this year than ever in my life, I would think. Not all of it as good as I would like it to be. But I guess it's helped. And I think it's also, that's probably the one sense of community that we can forge, is perhaps we've all been watching the same things on TV again, and we can all talk about that as a kind of shared experience. So there's that. But yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to going back to music venues and to the theatre and enjoying all of that. I mean, have you found anything that's helped you, you know, in terms of the creative arts throughout the last year?
Well, I think for me, I mean, I was basically writing this until, oh God, when did I hand it in, Nicola? Quite late on. June, July, I don't remember. I mean, it was published very quickly, and I spent a lot of the time. So the first lockdown, I was working on this book, and actually, you know, so that was really creative. But what I really missed are concerts and live theatre. Really missed them. The Endelian String Quartet were going to do their final farewell set of concerts here at West Road, and they haven't been able to do it. So I don't think anyone has put any questions in the chat. Does this mean no one has any questions at all?
If anyone has any questions, please do submit them now.
Yeah. Anyone?
I mean, whilst we wait for those questions,
Indeed.
perhaps you might like to mention a bit about a school that's been involved in the book since, well, pre-publication. So a copy was sent out to, I can't remember the name of the school.
Arbory School in Cambridge, but I think
really it was to ask for extension questions that weren't already in the book to some extent.
Yes. Yeah. So yes, they came back with questions, and in the video so we've produced a video that is available on the Hachette School's website, isn't it? And in that, Michael and I answer 2 of the questions, and the contributors all have pieces in the video, and they answer some of the others as well. So it was great getting them involved, and the teachers at that school just were bowled over by how engaged the children were and how much they loved being involved in it. So
we have a question for you, Annemarie.
Oh, for me, all right.
Yes. Okay, this is from Alison Nicholson. Thank you, Alison. The question is, did you have a problem with too much content? There is so much in the book. And who is the book aimed at? What age range?
Yes, always have problem with too much content, always, with all of these books. So it is quite hard pairing it all. That might be
a question for the editor, mightn't it?
As well. Well, yeah, I mean, Nicola and I discussed, you know, and I pared things down. Sorry, yes, who's the book aimed at? Well, this series is aimed at sort of children from 10 to 14, 16, but we don't talk down, we don't write down, you know, to children. So it's relevant for anyone, I think, and whoever wants to read it. Oh, there's a few more here. Oh, Kathy's lost the sound. Has anyone else lost the sound? No, I think it's just you, Kathy.
So can I just read out another question? So a question here from Roy. Many schools are desperate to apply the catch-up curriculum and are replacing lessons in drama, arts, dance, music and sport with additional core subjects. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that's a very big mistake, because children will just get thoroughly fed up, I think. And also, if they don't have, as we've said, the creativity of the arts, the time to stop and think, then it's going to close down their ability to learn, I think. What do you think, Paul?
Absolutely. I mean, I think not everyone is kind of attuned to academic learning. So I think having the kind of creative outlet is often the way in. And it's just, you know, it's important in terms of being a well-rounded individual, mental health, and just being more receptive to the world around them. And that's an essential part of learning, really. So yeah, I mean, I think it is pretty bad. And I think it's kind of marginalizing, and it's creating more after school clubs, which again makes it kind of secondary and less important than the other subjects, which really it isn't. There's a question here from Mary Buckley, which is, you don't mention that art can be used by political regimes to bring about radical transformation in society. Socialist realism in the 1930s was one such adopted for literature at the 1934 Union of Soviet Writers Congress. It shaped art, sculpture, and clothing design. How do you assess the creativity here at a time of the cult of the machine? Some of this art is very good.
Mary, yes, Mary is a specialist on that, in that field. Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder, Mary, what you think about the quality of that art. Is that what it shaped art? It did. And the creativity here at a time of the cult of the machine. Are you talking about creativity now? No, you're shaking your head. Mary, what?
Maybe Mary can unmute and
Yeah, exactly. Unmute.
Can you hear me?
Hi, there you go.
Right. Well, no, it was really just about the 1930s, because you were talking about imagination and art. And even though it was directed art, I think there was some imagination in the application of it. Some of it's very good and some of it probably less good. It's very diverse. That's really what I would say.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks. Yes, no, we didn't go down that road as well. I mean, there are so many things we didn't manage to fit in the book, of course. Sue Merriman, I was particularly struck by Matilda's statement in the recently released video. We don't need art, we are art. Matilda, do you want to actually say something about that or not? Won't put you on the spot if you don't want to. Shake your head if you don't want to say anything.
To say, to be honest.
Sorry?
I'm not really sure what to say, to be honest.
Okay, don't worry about that. Okay, so what's our view? We are art. I mean, Paul, do you want to say anything about that?
I feel like I'd be saying I'm like Gilbert and George or something if I was to declare myself a piece of art. Or I don't think I wouldn't consider myself as art personally.
No, but I imagine actually that, Matilda, what you were talking about was the fact that it's not outside us, you know, entirely. That you know, we can create anything. I mean, we can create things, we can create ideas, we can create.
I guess we are the machines of art in that sense, aren't we?
There we
We're
are.
the machines that create the art.
There we are. Okay, that's a good answer to that.
There's a question here from Anne Rooney. Hi, Anne. And the question is, was it hard to get the tone right so that the idea of the importance and impact of art is exciting, a spur to their own creativity and practice, rather than perhaps rather intimidating? I'm sure you have got this right, but how did you tackle it?
Yeah, I hope we've got it right. Yeah, getting the tone right is quite tough. But how? I don't know how. It's just a matter of distilling. It's distilling different things and getting other. I mean, Nicola, our wonderful editor, who is here somewhere, read everything, and Anthony did too. Because Michael was 7 weeks in ICU when this was being sort of all put together, after he sent me his very first drafts of his sections. You know, we split the sections half and half. And then he got very ill, and then he wasn't able to do anything on it. So normally what happens is we swap what we've written. Nicola looks at it as well. We get other people to read it, for example. Anyway, lots of other people get involved, and people make comments. So Nicola made comments, Anthony made comments, and we change it around. I change things, and this is what we've come up with. So it isn't entirely, you know, we don't just do it entirely without input from other people.
But I think that one thing which is really successful is a selection of quotes included, because I think that really helps kind of keep the idea of creativity as exciting when you've got all these kind of quotes from other practicing artists, or even the Einstein quote, for example. it really kind of excites the potential of the art forms, I think.
Yeah, I think that's the point of having so many different elements, so that you can see, you know, lots of different people's viewpoints and perspectives.
So there's another question here from Mary, which is, did you watch Grayson Perry's art club this year? I thought it was fantastic, involving lots of people. Have you watched it?
No, I haven't actually. I should have a look at that. Thanks, Mary.
The only thing I would say about that is I haven't seen it, but a lot of people have commented on how great it is and how good he is. But then he made that terrible comment about how this year would get rid of the deadwood
Yes,
in
yes,
art, which I
yes.
have to say he went right down in my
I'm
estimation.
afraid, same here. I'm afraid the same happened here. I just thought, no, why on earth did he say that?
Yeah.
And I know people who think he's greatly overrated. I mean, I have to say I do now as well. I mean, there are so many artists who are not known, who are very good. And there's a comment here from Patricia Hart. Has anyone mentioned that the layout of such a book is art? Thank you. I think that's true. Paul, what about you? Come on, this is in your particular area.
Well, I mean, you know, we designers are, you know, they're practicing artists, really, aren't they? And they're employed because of that skill. So they're very important people for us in publishing.
Yeah, I think so. Are there any other questions? Oh, Jack. Okay.
I wondered, there any other plans to publish any further books in the series, or ideas where the series could go next? I mean, a lot of that depends on getting the right topics, really. A lot of the titles we've published have been timely, whether deliberate or otherwise, and we like to have books out there which perhaps haven't been covered in this way before, as long as there's an appetite and a market for them. I'm quite keen to look at how we can work at these for younger readers in some respects, but there are plenty of ways that we could consider taking it further. If anyone has any suggestions for topics or ideas, then we're very open to hear them.
Yes, thanks. That's I'm very keen that we should carry on. I enjoy doing these books so much. I mean, just the most incredibly wonderful experience to be doing it. Matilda. So if you want to be a good artist, is it important to be good at art? Paul, what do you...
Well, I think the question is, what is good art? This is a very philosophical question. Is what do you define as being good in the practice of art? Is that subjective? I think if you're excited by what you create, that should be valid, valid enough. Or is it dependent on, someone who's going to give you a lot of money for it? That's constantly being explored and questioned. I don't have a definitive answer to that. We all like different things to a certain degree. There are some pieces of art which, if they look like something, that might be seen as good art. But obviously, art is also very conceptual as well. So it doesn't always have to look like something. It can feel like something. So it's a very open question, I think.
Yeah. Right. Lorena Hodgson says, was pleased to see a small mention of crafts. Yeah, I mean, we did mention crafts, and actually the those amazing quilts, of course, which now are being recognized as wonderful pieces of art and being compared with clay and Miro, and I don't know, not Miro, who was the other? Anyway, but they were thought of as simply as craft. So yes, we did mention that. And Jehan Halou says, what motivated you to write this book? Okay. I think the book is for all ages and adults will enjoy it too, says Jehan. Thank you. So yeah, she was a bit late coming in. So about what motivated us to write the book, I think, Jehan, you can watch the recording of this later and you'll see Paul talking about that. If you want to say anything more about that. I think we're just about out of time, but Paul.
I think really all I need to say at this point, other than thank you, Annemarie, for being part of this, co-authoring this amazing book, and it's a really valuable resource, I think, in opening readers' eyes up to the possibilities and the potential of art, is to say it's available at all good bookshops, online or otherwise, and be guided by your conscience in terms of where you buy it. So you may be aware that bookshop.org has launched recently, and I'll say no more other than that.
Independent bookshops.
Yes, but it's a book we're incredibly proud to publish, and hopefully it will help people have a better engagement as they grow up with the practice of art and understanding and enjoyment of it.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Thanks for commissioning it. I mean, it's been wonderful, wonderful working on this. And thank you, everybody, for coming along, for your questions and for just sort of being there and listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much.